Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Al Rosen.
Welcome to CAD-134, our weekly review. Today we're going to go through Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. If you look at D2L, we have the assignments set up for this week. We're going to cover Chapter 2 from our textbook and 3. And in Chapter 2 are the assignments from last week. If we look at the assignments from last week, what we covered was how to do these basic drawings and shapes. This one's not included, but essentially these shapes, as well as using the ellipse command, using the donut command, arc commands. And there are videos in the module for those exercises, so we don't necessarily need to go through all of them at this time. Taking this from top to bottom, if we look at our new assignments, Chapter 2, basic settings and commands. And we're going to look at basically kind of building on what we've already worked on. There's a lot of terminology here and it gets a little bit overwhelming. And so the lab-based courses or the drawings kind of incorporate these learning objectives. And we'll do that as well. Beginning a new drawing, when we start a new drawing, we'll have a template. Al, can you walk me through how to open up a template from how you have it set up in D2L?
Certainly, if you go back in a D2L, please, show. And if you go down to where it says, this is the paper needed to be used, once you open up AutoCAD and you click on the B size in was it blue color, level click on, please. It should be on the bottom, and AutoCAD's open. Click on Open, please. It's a DWT, which is a drawing template. And it should come up what's on our screen at this present time looking at me. It's a B-size paper for architecturals. And if you look on the bottom of architectural or bottom of the AutoCAD, it will have different levels of areas of templates and papers. And there it is. So right now it's on floor plan. If you go to Model, and in Model you'll see a grid come up, and it's preset ready to go for our settings. And Joe, you want to tell them what the settings we have on it?
Definitely. So if we go to this little arrow here and we show the menu bar, it makes things a little easier to find. And then if we go to Tools, Drafting Settings, we can see that we have a snap of 1 foot, 12 inches. And then we have a grid of 1 foot as well. Polar tracking is enabled, and we'll show you how that works, but you want that on. It makes things easier. Object snap sometimes gets in the way. F3 turns it on and off, but that will gravitate to the endpoints of lines. And so essentially we work with these 3 tabs in the drafting settings when we start to work with AutoCAD.
Now, also remember, whatever you do on model space will populate back into the floor plan, or we call paper space.
Right, so if I draw a line, and let's draw that line on a layer. And so if we go to the wall layer and we draw a line, and let's just make a quick room. So if we go this way and we'll say it's a big room, let's say it's 30 feet by 50 feet.
As you see how Joe's doing it, he's typing the size, putting a foot mark onto it, and hitting enter, and it automatically adjusts to that length that he's needed.
I'm going to make it 40 feet tall. And this is what I mean by polar. When polar is on, you get this green line that comes out. And so if I can come back here and say 30 foot mark, and then I can come back here, you'll also notice that it'll close, enter. Let's turn on our line weight.
And that's called snap command that's active.
If we double click in this viewport, so what we do is we draw the object in model space, flip over to paper space, double click in this viewport, and then I usually do zoom all. How do you zoom everything out?
Double click the wheel, please.
Even better.
And that depresses it and brings it up to the exact size or the large thing. Remember, your one on here is a 17 by 11 drawing area. So, but we have a larger size of the room. So we do it on model, which is 360 degrees circumference of a circle, or the earth, which AutoCAD does. And then we can also bring it into model paper space and scale it to what we need on an architectural scale, which I believe everybody has or been using in interior design.
All right, so let's get back to our lecture so that we can keep this to a reasonable length of recording. So this is the B-size paper that you will need, and we'll be doing a drawing, and it's been revised. It's similar to this one. They've changed this conference room a little bit. The furniture still looks the same, but the dimensions are different, and we'll cover that in a video at a different time. But as we go through, you will need that title block that we just downloaded in order to be able to create that drawing. Switching back to our PowerPoint. So we used the template, we downloaded it, and we opened it, and then we showed you how to draw some basic walls in model space. You can save the drawing. We'll be saving these drawings with our initials and then with the lab numbers. And so if we come back here to our drawings, we can come up here with the save as and save that with your initials. And save. If we come back to our lecture, a DWT format is a drawing template, and that's the way Al's got it laid out in D2L, because when you open a DWT, it just establishes all of the settings like line types, layers,
Line weights,
dimension scales. It sort of makes everything a format so that everybody looks the same on paper, so that one person isn't drawing the walls with blue walls and another one with green walls. And so there's a lot of standards that we use when we start to work with these formats or these drawing templates to make everything look like they belong together. Units. If you type in units, you'll notice that the units will come up like this, and we'll be working with architectural units. We'll go over how drawing scale works and within the viewports as we do the tutorials, but drawing scale is a very important aspect. And so being able to print drawings and make drawings that are measurable is what the goal is. CAD is a vector-based program, so everything we draw is real size. Drawing limits aren't really that important as they used to be. What it really does is it shows you the boundaries of your drawing area, and it's kind of limitless. And so it's really the boundaries of the grid that you set up. And then you can use that because your eye kind of likes to see that grid to get an understanding of how big everything is. If you know the grid is 1 foot by 1 foot, then you can just count grid squares and make a 10 foot by 10 foot room. And you can tell just by looking at it that that has been drawn correctly. We use the Cartesian coordinate system, the X and Y system, X, Y, and Z, grid and display. Okay, so as we go through our settings, we can turn on the grid display with the F7 key, and it'll turn on the grid. Grid display set to 1 means the grid is unlimited, and a grid display set to 0 means it's within the limits. And so that's something the author really likes to do. If I were to switch back into one of these drawings, like the one that we just started, and go back to model space, this is a grid display of 0. So if I type in grid display, and you don't have to type the whole word in, it'll find it. You can see it's set for 0, but if I change it to 1, now the grid is unlimited. If I hit enter, It gives me the last command back, and I set it to 0. Then it's back to the limits of the drawing.
And also, as he does it before, and he changed the grid settings, it gives it a population of the XY corner, and it gives you the original settings so you don't have to lose it.
So as we start to work with these drawings, these are what are called utilities. You know, basically how you make the drawings and the tools you need to it. Snap. Snap is like a tape measure. You want that snap because what happens is it's an invisible grid, and when things snap, they come out with even numbers. Without snap, you'll get something like 1 foot in 3 inches or 1 foot in some change essentially. But when snap is enabled, everything comes across as 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, or whatever increment you have that snap set at. So it's a good way to use it to get started. If you hit the F9 key, it turns the snap off. Zoom all, zooming or changing the magnification level is important. We use the zoom all command quite a bit just to be able to see that we have everything drawn. And then drafting settings. Work these tabs from the left to the right. At this point, we're using the first 3, snap and grid, polar tracking, and object snap. Layers. When we draw things, we draw on different layers. So as we separate the layers, you have a layer for the furniture, another layer for the electrical, another layer for the plumbing, and another layer for the walls. And that's so different people within the business or within the company that the enterprise is being designed for, let's say a school, can use the floor plans or the CAD plans for different things. Our facilities management department uses our floor plans constantly for computer network layout. And nowadays with the social distancing, we're using that too, so that we can make sure that everything stays at the right distances. And we'll use layers to make that easier to manage. They do a lot with layers. You don't need to know how to do everything. You just need to know how to turn them off and on. And you know how to change the colors and set the line types and the line weights. And we'll introduce more of these layer things as we go farther into it. But layers are kind of a standard that's used to organize your drawings, as are line types. As we work with our drawings, different line types mean different things. And so we'll set these line types according to the standards put out for architectural drawings. And then the line weights also have standards. Back in the day when we used pencils, you would have 2 or 3 different pencils with different leads. You'd have an HB lead, which was for drawing object lines. You'd have a 2H lead, which was for doing dimensions. And that gave your drawings a certain look where object lines were heavy, easier to see. And as you read a drawing or as you look at a drawing, certain things come to the surface first and other things are kind of in the background. And we use line weights to make it look that way. Layer statuses. When a layer is on, the light bulb is on. When it's off, the light bulb's off. Freeze and thaw kind of do the same thing. It's an older program, so they kept all of these older commands, but there's not a big difference. The difference is that one regenerates the database and the other does not. Back when we had computers with less processing power, it would slow it down quite a bit. And so you would freeze layers that you weren't using. But nowadays, most of the computers are pretty quick. Transparency makes objects see-through. A lot of right-click things that we'll go into farther down the line. Ortho mode. When we look at ortho mode, we need to take a look at horizontal and vertical. And then just basic line construction, drawing a line with snap like we demonstrated with that floor plan, where I drew a 30-foot by 40-foot room. And we did that by snapping to the increments here in our drawing. So if I come here and I want to draw a table that's going to be 15 feet, it's a big table, I can see that it snaps 15 feet. And if I go this way, 6 feet, And come back here 15 feet and then hit escape. Erase and undo. Erase erases the objects. Undo undoes the last command. Using absolute coordinates. This is a topic that is more mechanical in nature. And so we'll come back to this because essentially, if we're drawing parts for manufacturing, we use absolute coordinates. But if we're doing floor plans, we want to read it like a tape measure. So we don't do a lot of absolute coordinates. We do what's more called relative or relative polar. And so by enabling polar tracking, it makes everything much easier than reading through all this big mathematical stuff. So as we go horizontal to the right or at 3 o'clock, that would be 0 degrees. If we go north, 90 degrees. If we go west, 180 degrees. It's just navigational at this point. And then as we work with dynamic input, what that does is that makes the cursor the area of input. And so there's a command line on AutoCAD, and the command line is sort of the old school. This is the command line where you can type in things like line. And then you can go and draw your lines. Or if I have the dynamic input on, I can just type in line and you can see it comes up right by the cursor rather than in the command line. And this is the way most people do it now, or at least most people navigate their CAD systems with this dynamic input. Circle command, how to draw a circle. Line type scaling changes the dash width. And we'll talk about things as we go farther ahead into it. But as we work with scales, what we'll find is that the line types are sensitive to the LT scale settings. Zoom just makes things bigger or smaller. Panning, I'll use the wheel on the mouse by pushing it to pan. Regen and redraw, this is sort of an old school. Back when we had blip mode, you would have these little dots. And they were almost like eraser shavings. It was kind of like they wanted you to clean the eraser shavings off by hitting redraw. Move and edit, how to move an object. Undo and redo. Arc commands. And these are in the videos. And so as we start to go and look at them, there's a number of different ways to draw an arc. And so if we come back to our drawing, and let's look at a different one here. Let's look at something like this. So when we draw these arcs, if I wanted to draw an arc, I can come in here with an arc command and say 1, 2, and 3. And I can also then use my grips kind of to fix it. Need a little bit more coffee today. But once you have the arc on the screen and you know how to manipulate it, you don't need to necessarily know every different way to draw an arc. I typically just go with 3-point, but oftentimes you will have to have a radius or a value for that. Something like this, which is just a picture of a lamp on a table, isn't really about the dimensions, it's more about how it looks. The ellipse command, as we draw the ellipse command, that again gets into our drawing assignment. And so if we take a look at this drawing assignment right here, when we draw this assignment, and I'll just change my color to purple, we would use the ellipse command. And so we'd come in here with an ellipse. Excuse me. And you set the center, set the side of it. Oops. There we go. Just like that. Right mouse click, repeat the ellipse. Well, you get the idea. Well, I'll do it again because I feel bad if I don't get this right. Center.
Need more chocolate, more caffeine.
I do.
Go up, up. There you go.
I think I'm doing it right. I think the computer just doesn't do it the way it's supposed to do it. It's the computer's fault, not mine.
Talking nice to it, that's all.
Yeah. And the donut command. I don't know why they call it the donut command. I guess it's still PC, so politically correct. So the donut command just basically allows you to create a boundary shape like this. And as we look at scaling, making things bigger and smaller, and then our command line, this is what we had talked about. And I'm trying to keep this video to a reasonable level. So I'm going to briefly talk about plotting, but we'll demonstrate that in later chapters. As you look at plotting, plotting is tied to the printers. So when we plot things, we actually have to tell it which printer we're plotting from. And then we have a number of different options like scale and fitting it to paper and things like that. And so we'll go into plotting a little bit farther down the line. But there is quite a bit to making things look good on paper, and AutoCAD is an excellent tool for that. So with that, I'm going to come back here to the D2L, and I'm going to get ready to end this recording. Al, is there anything that we want to add to this before I end our project 3- or our chapter review?
Yeah, what we need to do is make sure to do the questions. This is chapter number 2 questions and projects, and this is chapter 3 number questions, and it's also there. It's in blue there. Go up a little bit more.
So for chapter 2, you are to do the questions, and if we look at them, these are due next week, correct?
Yes.
And then if we come back here, we're doing the same thing with chapter 3, where the questions will be there. Is this them, Al?
No, if you go up where it says chapter 2 questions right there,
right.
There's chapter 2 questions, chapter 3 is right next to it.
Great.
And also projects at the same time are there currently at chapter 3.
So everything's in the main splash page, but don't forget, we do have the content in the content tabs.
Which
and
gives
so as you go and you work with these, make sure you look at the content tabs. And so as we look at chapter 1 is laid out there for you with PowerPoint. Chapter 2, again, a little bit more instruction, a little bit more detailed, but a lot of it is linked to the main page now. And so as we start to work with it, we're just trying to get everybody to understand how to follow the way Al and I teach the course. And then chapter 3, this will be our next thing. Okay, Al, what else do we need?
Just make sure they turn on auto work, please, as soon as they can. There's a little invitation. If you go down a little further, please. Keep going down, keep going real quick. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There goes Simon's. This is Simon's on there. So it tells you what has to be done, where it is, and etc. like that. Directly underneath it, we talked about last week, talked about the tool sets in AutoCAD. We have now provided that. It's in purple in there, or magenta. If you click on it, it automatically opens to a PDF for you. And also later on, we're going to talk about in class, Design Center. We'll go over that later on in class, not now. And that's about it.
Excellent. All right. So in a matter of keeping the video from getting too long, we're going to end this video and post it. And we'll continue to make these short videos for you to be able to understand our weekly assignments. And so before I post it, you can see last week's meeting, Zoom video meeting number 1. And we'll post these other videos on the main splash page as well. Alrighty, so that takes it for our video announcement. Al, anything else I need to add?
No, we will be going on there at 10 o'clock. And so you will see us then also.
Alrighty, I'm going to end the video then. Thank you very much.